Earlier this month, October 1st, 2021, former UFC lightweight champion Jon Jones, one of mixed martial arts' most decorated fighters, posted on social media a video of he and his fiancée, Jessie Moses, kissing and apparently having made up after his arrest for domestic violence the previous week. The two have been together for over 17 years. The incident happened on the morning of Friday, September 24th, in Las Vegas, Nevada, at Caesars Palace Resort Hotel, just hours after he was inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame.
I'd like to thank my beautiful fiance, Jessie Moses. She is the mother of my children. She is my future wife. She is my nutritionist, my security guard, she does it all. And she handles all types of situations for me, yeah. Without that woman, who knows where I'd be. But God bless you guys. Have a great night. Thank you so much.
A little after 5 a.m., a security guard at the hotel placed a 911 call reporting a domestic violence situation.
Hey, this is Eduardo with Caesars Palace Security.
Hi.
Hey, we've got a possible DV call, domestic violence call. Female is bleeding from the nose and mouth. She's not admitting to any domestic violence, any physical violence. But she's bleeding from the nose and mouth. She's down with us while the male is up at the room. And he's actually a professional MMA fighter, Jonathan Jones. And she's refusing to go back to the room.
And we'll get an officer out there as soon as we can.
When police arrived, hotel staff informed them that Jon had left the property with two other men. Police made contact with Jessie and observed blood around her lips, chin, and all over her sweatshirt. She had a swollen lower lip and a mark on her upper right cheek. Jessie said that Jon had gone out drinking with his friends the night before while she and their 3 children went to sleep in the hotel room. She said when Jon returned, he was not very happy and an altercation ensued. She said he was aggressive but not violent towards her. Police asked if anything had gotten physical between her and her fiancé. Not too physical, but a little bit, yeah, she responded. She went on to tell authorities that Jon had only grabbed the back of her hair as she was trying to leave the room and that he hadn't hit her. She seems to attribute the injury to her mouth to dry and cracked lips. In the hotel room, she showed police where the dust-up had occurred. Police observed shoes strewn about the room and blood on the bed sheets. Meanwhile, a police unit had located Jon walking north on Las Vegas Boulevard. Police cuffed the fighter, and he was initially compliant. But before he was read his rights, Jon became upset and suddenly threatened that he was going to bring a huge lawsuit against the LVMPD for putting him in handcuffs on the biggest night of his life. At some point, Jon became enraged, possibly realizing the gravity of the situation, and he headbutted the hood of the police car, leaving damage. Police said Jon's emotions swung wildly during their interaction with him. He was calm. He was quote-unquote agitated. He cried. He talked about the problems he and his fiancée had been having recently. Jon claims to not remember much about the incident in the hotel room that brought him together with police right then. He recalled going back to the hotel room to get 10 grand and telling Jessie that he was going to the strip club. She was fine with that, but an argument ensued about their relationship. But Jon said he never got physical with her, and he knew nothing about any injuries she might have. At one point, Jon joked about how he could get out of the cuffs. He said he'd like to see if he could take on all of the cops present by himself. He was warned that he'd be tased if he kept it up. He apologized and was subsequently taken to jail. He was charged with felony tampering with a police vehicle and misdemeanor battery. Jones was released later that morning from Clark County Detention Center after posting $8,000 bail. In an article that was published in USA Today in April of 2016, Jon talks about his drug dependency. He says he was an addict. He talks about how consumption of marijuana had consumed so much of his time and money, about his regrets, and about how he was now on the right path. He makes mention of how his fiancée had put up with him for the previous 7 years. She says she's glad to have the man back that she fell in love with back in high school. The article is a brief profile of Jones, detailing his many successes inside of the octagon, as well as his repeated failures outside of it. It was also part of the promotion for his upcoming fight, in which he would face light heavyweight contender Ovince St. Preux for a UFC championship. During the 3 years leading up to that match, John was arrested once for driving under the influence, once for leaving the scene of an accident, and once tested positive for cocaine, jeopardizing one of the biggest fights of his career against his greatest rival, Daniel D.C. Cormier. Jones fought Cormier in January 2015 to retain his UFC championship title, and subsequently his positive test was made public and he checked himself into rehab. His DUI arrest happened in May of 2012, 10 months after he became the youngest champion in UFC history at 23 years old. John had crashed his Bentley into a light pole in Binghamton, New York, where he grew up. He eventually pleaded guilty to the DWI charge, paid a $1,000 fine, and had his license suspended for 6 months. He faced no punishment from the UFC. John's hit-and-run arrest in 2015 resulted in his suspension from the UFC and the confiscation of his championship. The incident happened in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where John lives with Jesse and their 3 children. According to a police report, on the morning of Sunday, April 26, 2015, just 3 months after his fight with Daniel Cormier, John was behind the wheel of a rented Buick SUV when the car sailed through a red light and crashed into the driver's side door of a car driven by a pregnant woman. The woman suffered a fractured arm as a result of the collision. John disembarked the vehicle and departed the scene. He realized that he'd left some cash in the car, returned, retrieved the money, then ran off down the street and hopped a fence, according to witnesses. In his haste, he forgot and left behind a smoking pipe which had weed inside of it and which was found by police. A warrant was issued for his arrest the following day. He turned himself in soon after, and his suspension and repossession of his title quickly followed. He eventually pleaded guilty to leaving the scene of an accident and was sentenced to 18 months of probation and 72 hours of community service. In the previously mentioned 2016 USA Today article, there are a couple of highlights which are comically ironic in retrospect. John talks about how he wants to help inspire others to emerge from a troubled path. John also regularly interspersed his remarks to the journalist with the admission that his positive comments will blow up in his face if he messes up again. He did mess up again, but his abysmal lows were juxtaposed with exuberant highs. At around the same time he was interviewed for that article, in March of 2016, he was cited for drag racing in Albuquerque.
You and I both know that I was not drag racing.
No, sir, I actually know that you were drag racing.
Okay,
I watched you do it.
Okay, let me talk, right?
Okay.
Do I have that right
Mr.
to
Jones,
talk?
we're not having court out here.
Do I have that
you
right
have
to
a court
talk?
date and you can...
Do I have that right to talk?
You do have that right to talk,
Okay,
and you can
so
tell
give
us
me my
in
right
court.
to let me talk, okay?
Go ahead, tell me what you're going to tell.
No.
Don't tell me what I know. You're going to testify to what I know?
Yeah, fuck yeah, I'm going to testify to what you know.
I know that you were
and
drag
I
racing, and I will testify to that.
4 days after the article was published, John made a victorious return to live combat after the suspension for the hit-and-run arrest and defeated St. Preux to become a UFC champion for a second time. John was then scheduled to fight Daniel Cormier again for the undisputed light heavyweight title. It was a rematch that UFC fans awaited impatiently for more than a year. But John was removed from the fight and eventually stripped of the title and suspended again in November of 2016 after it was determined that he had been using performance-enhancing substances. 9 months later, on July 29th of 2017, John made another comeback and finally rematched Daniel Cormier. Jones vanquished DC and became UFC champion for a third time, his second undisputed title. Subsequently, John again tested positive for performance enhancers and was again stripped of his title, suspended once more, and his victory over his bitter rival was erased from the records and replaced with a no contest. These penalties gave John a pair of dubious titles to go along with his other records and trophies. Jones is the first and only fighter in UFC history to be stripped of a title for disciplinary reasons, and he's the first and only fighter to be 3 times stripped of the UFC championship. In yet another comeback fight, John fought Alexander Gustafsson in Los Angeles, California on December 29th of 2018 and defeated him to become a UFC champion for the 4th time, though his path to this distinction was an unfortunate one. Jones defended his title 3 times in the next year. Then in March of 2020, he was arrested for driving under the influence again after police heard gunshots and found John sitting in a parked car where they found a pistol and a half a bottle of booze.
Can you start the test now? EFGHIJKLMNOP. EFGHIJKLMNOP. Okay. All right, John, go and turn around. So I do have to place you on the arrest for DWI, okay? Yes, sir.
The following week, John pleaded guilty to driving while intoxicated, and charges of negligent use of a firearm and possession of an open container were dropped. He issued a statement at the time which said, in part, "I accept full responsibility for my actions, and I know I have some personal work to do, which involves the unhealthy relationship I have with alcohol." About a month later, John put on a cape and became a crime fighter, marauding the streets of Albuquerque, helping to keep the city safe as lawlessness and vandalism spread across the country amid the Black Lives Matter protests.
Give me the spray can. Give me the spray can.
It's not the way, man.
Spray can. I'm doing nothing. Give me the spray can. Here.
He got together crews of people to help clean up and repair damaged small businesses after the riots.
Let's see if we can find something to clean up. You guys need help with your small businesses? We're here. Hit us up. We'll be here all day. Time to work.
Later that year, surveillance videos surfaced of John brandishing a shotgun and apparently chasing a burglar off of his Albuquerque property. He posted video of the incident to social media afterwards. There was some speculation that the confrontation was a staged performance orchestrated by Jones. The 2018 brawl between Gus and John was one of the fights of the year that year. And 3 weeks ago, September 24th, 2021, the pair of prizefighters was inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame for their performance that night. John gave his speech, and several hours later the 911 call was placed, and you know the rest. Just before the ceremony and hours before his arrest, as John stood on the red carpet, he gave an interview in which he shared some thoughts about Chandler Jones, one of his 2 brothers, both of whom are professional athletes in the National Football League and are Super Bowl champions.
No, I'm not going to tease Chandler. Chandler is he's my inspiration. Chandler does he does so well in his personal life. He does all the right things. Goes to bed really early. He eats really clean. Massage therapist comes to the house several times a week. I really am trying to model my professionalism after Chandler. He does it so well. I'm super proud to be a Hall of Famer. I know Chandler will be too. And we're just going to keep trying to raise the bar for the Jones family.
A judge has found probable cause to proceed with the charges against Jones. An initial court date has been scheduled for October 26th. This past Wednesday, October 13th, John sent a tweet in which he denied striking his wife. He also addressed the fact that he had just been suspended from the world-famous martial arts gym where he trains in Albuquerque. As of this date, it is unclear whether Jones will face disciplinary action from the UFC or from the athletic commissions. John Jones faces a possible 5 years in prison if convicted of the tampering charge and a fine of up to $10,000. His misdemeanor battery charge carries a potential penalty of 6 months in county jail and/or a fine of up to $1,000. Thank you guys again for joining me. Thanks for liking, thanks for subscribing, thanks for hanging around to the end. If you haven't already, if you like the content, please subscribe and like the video. That helps the channel to grow. I've got a number of interesting projects in store for you guys that I'm going to be dropping in the near future. Again, thanks for tuning in. Peace.